My fiancé confessed to his ex that every detail of our wedding was actually planned for her and he'd be imagining her face instead of mine during the ceremony, so I disappeared on the wedding day and left a life-size cutout of her standing at the altar in my place. I got engaged to Timothy, 34M, about 8 months ago. We had been together for almost 4 years when he proposed. I'm 31F. The proposal happened at a restaurant where we had our second date. He got down on one knee right after dessert arrived. Everyone around us clapped. I said yes because I loved him and because it seemed like the natural next step after 4 years. The wedding planning started immediately. Timothy wanted to get married within the year. He kept saying we had already waited long enough and there was no point in a long engagement. At first I thought it was sweet that he was so eager to make me his wife. My friends told me I was lucky to have someone who was so sure about wanting to marry me. I believed them. We set the date for October 12th. That gave us about 7 months to plan everything. I work as a freelance graphic designer, so my schedule is flexible. Timothy works in finance and his hours are long, but he makes good money. We live in his condo in the city. The building is called Riverside Towers. It overlooks the water and has a doorman. His name is on the lease. I moved in with him 2 years into our relationship. The wedding planning fell entirely on me. Every time I tried to get Timothy involved, he said he trusted my judgment. He said he was working extra hours to save money for our future. He said planning a wedding was stressful and he didn't want to add to my plate by giving opinions that might conflict with what I wanted. He gave me his credit card and told me to do whatever would make me happy. I planned a small ceremony at a historic chapel downtown. The reception would be at a restaurant nearby. We were inviting about 80 people. I found a caterer and a photographer. I ordered flowers and sent out invitations. I bought a dress on sale at a bridal shop that was going out of business. The whole time Timothy barely asked about any of it. When I showed him pictures of the chapel, he nodded and said it looked nice. When I asked if he wanted to try the food at the restaurant, he said he was sure it would be fine. My best friend Heidi, 29F, was my maid of honor. She noticed that Timothy seemed checked out. She asked me if everything was okay between us. I told her he was just busy with work. She said most grooms at least pretended to care about the centerpieces. I laughed it off, but her comment stayed with me. Timothy and I stopped going on dates around the time the engagement started. We used to go out for dinner once a week. We used to take weekend trips. After the proposal, that all stopped. He said he needed to work weekends. He said going out to eat was a waste of money when we were saving for the wedding. I cooked dinner most nights. He came home late and ate in front of the television. On weekends I worked on wedding stuff while he answered emails in the other room. I tried to talk to him about it once. I asked if he still wanted to get married. He looked surprised by the question. He said of course he did. He said he was working so hard because he wanted to give me the life I deserved. He said once the wedding was over we could relax and enjoy being married. He kissed me on the forehead and went back to his laptop. 3 weeks before the wedding I got a message on Instagram. The account belonged to someone named Ashley, 32F. I didn't recognize her at first. Then I read her message and realized she was Timothy's ex-girlfriend from college. They dated for almost 3 years. He had mentioned her a few times early in our relationship. He said they broke up because they wanted different things. He never talked about her after that. Ashley's message was long. She said she needed to tell me something. She said she had been engaged to Timothy 8 years ago. They had planned a wedding for October 15th at the same chapel I had booked. She said Timothy had broken up with her 2 months before their wedding date. She said she had moved to another state to start over. She said she recently got engaged again and her fiancé was looking at wedding venues. When she told Timothy congratulations through a mutual friend, he had sent her a message. She sent me screenshots. Dozens of them. The messages started right after she announced her engagement on social media. Timothy had congratulated her. Then he started asking about her wedding plans. He asked where she was getting married. He asked what date she had chosen. He asked if she remembered the plans they had made together all those years ago. The messages got stranger. He told her he was getting married too. He said he was using all the ideas they had discussed when they were together. He said the chapel was the same one they had picked. He said the restaurant was where they had their tasting menu. He said the flowers were the same type she had wanted. He said every time he thought about the wedding he pictured her walking down the aisle instead of me. I read the messages 3 times. Then I put my phone down and walked to the bathroom. I threw up. I sat on the floor for a long time. When I came out, Timothy was home. He was in the kitchen making a sandwich. He asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. He shrugged and took his sandwich to the living room. I waited until he fell asleep that night. Then I went through his phone. I know it was wrong, but I needed to know if the messages were real. They were. He hadn't even deleted them. The conversation with Ashley was right there in his Instagram DMs. I scrolled through and found more. He had sent her photos of the chapel. He had sent her a picture of the menu from the restaurant. He had told her he wished things had worked out differently between them. I took screenshots of everything. Then I put his phone back on the nightstand. I got into bed and stared at the ceiling. Timothy was snoring next to me. I got up and went to the guest room. I locked the door and sat on the bed. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I told Timothy my cousin was sick and I needed to go help her for a few days. He barely looked up from his coffee. He said that was fine. He said to let him know if I needed anything. I packed a bag and left. I went to Heidi's apartment. She lives about 20 minutes away. When she opened the door I started crying. She pulled me inside and made me sit down. I showed her everything. She read the messages and her face went white. She said we needed to cancel the wedding immediately. I said I wanted to, but I didn't know how. We spent the next 2 days at her apartment. Timothy texted me twice. Once to ask when I was coming home. Once to remind me we had a final head count due to the caterer. I didn't respond to either message. Heidi wanted me to confront him. I told her I would, but I needed time to think. I made a plan. I called my sister and told her what happened. She offered to help however she could. I called my bridesmaids and explained the situation. Everyone was shocked. One of the bridesmaids said she had always thought Timothy was cold. Another said she wasn't surprised. They all agreed to help me with what I wanted to do. I went back to the condo when Timothy was at work. I packed my clothes and my laptop and anything else that belonged to me. I made multiple trips to my car. The doorman asked if I was moving. I said I was just storing some things at a friend's place. He helped me carry boxes. I left behind everything Timothy had bought me. The kitchen appliances he got me for Christmas. The jewelry he gave me for my birthday. The coat he surprised me with last winter. I didn't want any of it. I moved into Heidi's spare room. Then I contacted the chapel. I told them the wedding was off, but I had a request. I asked if instead of a bride walking down the aisle they could place a poster at the front. I explained what had happened. The event coordinator was a woman in her 50s named Margaret. She said she had been working weddings for 30 years and this was the best revenge plan she had ever heard. She said she would help. I found a photo of Ashley from her social media. I sent it to a print shop and had it blown up to life size. The print came out perfect. Heidi and I picked it up 2 days before the wedding. We drove it to the chapel and Margaret helped us figure out where to put it. The morning of October 12th I was at Heidi's apartment. Timothy called me 6 times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails asking where I was. He said the wedding was starting in 3 hours. He said people were going to start arriving soon. He sounded annoyed more than worried. I stayed at Heidi's and watched television. She sat with me. We didn't talk much. My phone kept buzzing. Timothy called. His mother called. My mother called. I turned my phone off. Heidi's roommate had gone to the chapel to watch. She texted Heidi updates. The guests arrived. Timothy was at the altar in his tuxedo. His groomsmen stood next to him. The music started. No bride appeared. Instead the bridesmaids carried out the life-size photo of Ashley and propped it up at the front of the chapel. Heidi's roommate said Timothy's face went completely blank. People in the pews started whispering. His mother stood up. Heidi arrived at the chapel just as the chaos was starting. She walked to the front and told everyone the wedding was cancelled. She said if anyone wanted to know why they should ask Timothy. Then she left. The calls and messages started an hour later. Timothy called 15 times in a row. His mother left me a voicemail saying I was a cruel person. My own mother called and said I had embarrassed the entire family. She said whatever Timothy had done couldn't possibly be worth this kind of spectacle. She said I should have handled it privately. I didn't respond to anyone. Heidi and I drove to the beach. We spent the weekend at a cheap motel. We sat on the sand and watched the waves. When we got back to the city on Monday my phone had 63 missed calls. I listened to one voicemail from Timothy. He said I had humiliated him in front of everyone he knew. He said I had ruined his life over some old messages. He said I was psychotic and jealous. He said Ashley meant nothing to him. He said I had thrown away 4 years over nothing. I deleted the voicemail. Then I blocked his number. I blocked his mother. I blocked anyone from his family who had contacted me. My mother kept calling. She said I needed to apologize. She said Timothy was telling everyone I had a breakdown. She said I was making our family look bad. I told her I wasn't apologizing. She said I was being childish. I hung up on her. I stayed at Heidi's for 2 weeks. Then I found a studio apartment across town. It was small and the building was old but the rent was reasonable. I signed the lease and moved in. Heidi helped me buy furniture. My sister sent me money for a security deposit. I started taking on more freelance work. Timothy kept trying to contact me through mutual friends. He sent messages through people we both knew. He said we needed to talk. He said I owed him an explanation. I told everyone who contacted me to tell him I had nothing to say. Eventually the messages stopped. Update 1: A lot has happened since I posted. Most of it has been worse than I expected. Some of it has been strange in ways I didn't anticipate. After the wedding that never happened I cut contact with Timothy completely. I also stopped talking to most of his family. His mother sent me letters. Actual physical letters in the mail. She said I was vindictive. She said Timothy made a mistake but everyone makes mistakes. She said I should have given him a chance to explain. I didn't open the letters after the first 2. I threw the rest away. My own mother kept calling. We had a few conversations that went nowhere. She couldn't understand why I didn't just talk to Timothy privately. She said airing everything out in public was trashy. She said the stunt with the photo was cruel. I tried to explain what the messages had said, but she kept interrupting. She said men sometimes get cold feet before weddings. She said he probably just panicked and reached out to an ex. She said it didn't mean anything. I stopped answering her calls after the third conversation. She left voicemails saying I was being dramatic. She said I was ruining my life. She said I would regret this when I was older and alone. I didn't call her back. Heidi was the only person I talked to regularly. She checked on me every day. She brought me groceries when I was too tired to leave the apartment. She helped me apply for new freelance contracts. She never once suggested I should reconsider or give Timothy another chance. Then about a month after the wedding I got a message from someone I didn't know. Her name was Victoria, 29F. She said she was Timothy's cousin. She said we had met at a family barbecue 2 years ago, but I probably didn't remember her. I did remember her actually. She had been nice. We talked about a documentary we had both seen. Victoria said she needed to meet with me. She said it was important. I was suspicious, but I agreed. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. She showed up with a folder full of papers. She told me Timothy had been telling everyone I was unstable. He said I had accused him of cheating when he hadn't done anything wrong. He said I had become obsessed with his ex-girlfriend for no reason. He said he tried to calm me down, but I wouldn't listen. He said I humiliated him at the wedding because I was having some kind of episode. His family believed him. Most of them anyway. His mother was telling people I had always been jealous and insecure. She said I never trusted Timothy. She said I went through his phone without permission and took things out of context. Victoria said even some of my own relatives were starting to believe his version of events. I showed Victoria the screenshots. All of them. She read every message. She sat there for 20 minutes reading. When she finished, she pushed the folder across the table and said she had brought something for me too. Inside were printouts of Timothy's social media activity from the past 8 years. Victoria said she had always thought Timothy was off. She said after the wedding she decided to do some digging. She found posts and comments that showed Timothy had never really gotten over Ashley. He commented on her photos for years. He liked everything she posted. When she announced her engagement, he commented congratulations with 3 heart emojis. Victoria also found messages Timothy had sent to mutual friends. In these messages he complained about Ashley moving on. He said she was the one who got away. He said he regretted breaking up with her. These messages were from 2 years ago. I was already living with him when he sent them. Victoria said her family had a rule about cheating and lying. Her aunt had been cheated on by her husband for 5 years. The whole family knew except her. When she finally found out, it destroyed her. She never trusted anyone again. After that, Victoria's family decided they would always tell the truth even if it was uncomfortable. She said that's why she was here. She asked if she could send the screenshots to the family group chat. I said yes. She did it right there at the table. She typed out a message explaining what Timothy had really done. Then she attached all the screenshots. She hit send and put her phone face down. Her phone started buzzing immediately. She didn't look at it. We finished our coffee and she paid the bill. She said she was sorry for what Timothy did. She said she was sorry her family believed him. She said they would know the truth now. I went home and waited. I didn't have to wait long. My phone started getting notifications. People I barely knew were apologizing. Timothy's aunts and uncles sent messages saying they had no idea. His younger brother called and left a voicemail saying he felt sick. Even his mother sent a text. She didn't apologize, but she said she wished she had known the full story. Timothy called me from a number I didn't recognize. I answered without thinking. He was screaming. He said I had turned his family against him. He said I had ruined his reputation. He said everyone was calling him pathetic. He said his friends weren't answering his calls. He said it was all my fault. I hung up. He called back. I didn't answer. He called 12 more times from different numbers. I blocked all of them. Heidi came over that night. She brought wine and takeout. We ate and she told me Victoria had done the right thing. She said Timothy deserved everything he was getting. She said his family should have asked more questions before taking his side. The next few weeks were quieter. I focused on work. I landed a big contract with a marketing firm. The pay was good and the project would last 3 months. I started going to a yoga class near my apartment. I made friends with a woman named Thea who worked at the library. We got coffee sometimes. My mother called once. She said she heard what really happened. She said she still thought I could have handled it better, but she understood why I was upset. She said maybe we could get lunch sometime. I said maybe. We haven't had lunch. Timothy's social media went dark. Victoria told me he deactivated everything after the screenshots went public. She said he was apparently staying with a friend because his family didn't want to see him. She said his mother was humiliated. She said this was the worst thing that had ever happened to their family. I didn't feel good about any of it. I didn't feel victorious or satisfied. I mostly felt tired. I kept working and going to yoga and having coffee with Thea. Life kept moving forward. Then 2 months after the wedding I got a call from a number with an area code I didn't recognize. I answered. It was Ashley. She said she needed to talk to me. She said something had happened and I needed to know about it. Update 2: Ashley called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was working on designs for the marketing firm when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. I'm glad I did. She apologized for bothering me. She said she had gotten my number from Victoria, who had gotten it from somewhere in the family. She said she debated calling for weeks but decided I deserved to know what was happening. Timothy had been contacting her constantly. After his family found out the truth and stopped talking to him, he apparently decided he had nothing left to lose. The messages to Ashley started small. He apologized for what he did. He said he never should have used me the way he did. He said he realized now that she was the only person he ever really loved. Ashley ignored the messages. She had just gotten married to her fiancé in November. She was happy. She didn't want anything to do with Timothy. But he kept messaging. He sent long paragraphs about their relationship. He sent her photos from when they were together. He told her he made a mistake breaking up with her 8 years ago. She blocked him on everything. He created new accounts. He found her email address and sent her messages there. He sent her husband messages on LinkedIn saying he needed to talk to Ashley about something important. Her husband blocked him too. Then Timothy started showing up places. Ashley and her husband live in a different state, but Timothy had figured out where. He showed up at her workplace. He waited in the parking lot until she came out. He tried to talk to her. She told him to leave her alone. She went back inside and called building security. They escorted him off the property. A week later he showed up at her apartment building. He rang the buzzer repeatedly. Her husband went downstairs and told him to leave. Timothy said he just needed 5 minutes to talk to Ashley. Her husband said if he didn't leave, they would call the police. Timothy said they couldn't keep him from talking to the woman he loved. Her husband called the police. They came and told Timothy to leave. He left, but he came back the next day. This time Ashley called the police herself. They told Timothy if he came back he would be arrested for harassment. He said fine. He left. 3 days later he came back. Ashley's husband saw him in the parking lot and went out to confront him. Timothy was sitting in his car. Her husband knocked on the window. Timothy got out. They started arguing. Timothy said Ashley belonged with him. Her husband said Timothy needed help. Timothy pushed him. The husband pushed back. It turned into a fight. Neighbors called the police. When the cops arrived, both men were on the ground. Timothy had a bloody nose. Ashley's husband had a split lip. The police arrested Timothy for assault and harassment. They took him to the county jail. Ashley said Timothy called her from jail. She didn't answer. He left a voicemail begging her to bail him out. He said he was sorry. He said he just wanted to talk to her. He said if she would just give him a chance to explain, everything would make sense. She deleted the voicemail and blocked the jail number. Timothy's bail was set at $5,000. He called his mother. She refused to pay it. He called his brother. His brother said no. He called friends. No one would help him. He sat in jail for 4 days before someone finally posted bail. Ashley didn't know who. When he got out, he had court dates scheduled. He was facing charges for assault and stalking. Ashley filed for a restraining order. It was approved. Timothy was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from her at all times. Ashley told me all of this over the phone. She said she wanted me to know because Timothy was clearly not stable. She said she worried he might try to contact me next. She said I should be careful. I thanked her for calling. She said she was sorry for everything. I told her none of it was her fault. We hung up. I told Heidi what happened. She said Timothy had completely lost it. She said we should tell Victoria in case his family didn't know. I messaged Victoria. She said she had heard. She said Timothy's mother was refusing to talk about it. She said the family was mortified. I went about my life. I finished the marketing project. I started another one. I kept going to yoga. Thea and I went to see a movie. I bought plants for my apartment. I hung artwork on the walls. I made the space feel like mine. Then I got a letter in the mail. It was from an address I didn't recognize. Inside was a check and a handwritten note. The note was from Timothy's grandmother. She said she had heard about everything that happened. She said she was ashamed of her grandson. She said she wanted to do something to make it right. The check was for $8,000. She said it was coming out of Timothy's inheritance. She had already changed her will. She said the money was to cover what I had spent on the wedding. She said it was the least she could do. I stared at the check for a long time. Heidi said I should keep it. She said I had earned it after everything Timothy put me through. My sister said the same thing. Thea said it was a kind gesture from someone who felt guilty about her grandson's actions. I deposited the check. I used some of it to buy a new laptop for work. I put the rest in savings. I didn't feel bad about it. Timothy's mother sent me one more message after that. She said her mother had no right to give me that money. She said I had manipulated an old woman. She said I was a gold digger who had been after Timothy's family money all along. I blocked her. Victoria told me Timothy had gone completely silent after the arrest. He wasn't on social media. He wasn't answering calls from family. She said someone saw him at a grocery store and he looked terrible. She said he had lost weight and wasn't shaving. She said it was sad. I didn't think it was sad. I thought it was what happened when someone built their entire life around a fantasy and then the fantasy rejected them. I thought it was what happened when someone used another person as a placeholder. I thought it was what he deserved. Update 3. It's been 5 months since the wedding that didn't happen. I'm writing this because people have been asking for updates and because I want to close this chapter. Timothy went to court in February. He took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to assault and harassment. He got probation and was ordered to stay away from Ashley permanently. He also has to do community service and anger management classes. Victoria told me all of this. I didn't go to the court hearing. His family has mostly cut him off. His mother still talks to him, but according to Victoria, even she keeps him at a distance. His brother won't see him. His cousins avoid him. His grandmother hasn't spoken to him since she changed her will. Victoria said he's living in a small apartment on the other side of the city and working at some kind of office job that pays half what he used to make. I haven't seen or heard from him directly since the phone calls right after Victoria sent the screenshots. I still have him blocked on everything. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about what he did. Then I remember that people like him usually find a way to make themselves the victim in every story. I don't waste much time wondering anymore. My mother and I are not in contact. After the check from Timothy's grandmother, she sent me several messages saying I was a horrible daughter. She said I had embarrassed her in front of her friends. She said everyone in her social circle was talking about the wedding disaster. She said I should have kept things private. I blocked her number after the 5th message. My sister and I talk regularly. She never believed Timothy's lies. She told me she always thought he was using me for something but couldn't figure out what. When the truth came out, she said it made sense. She visits me sometimes. We order food and watch bad television. It's nice. Heidi is still my best friend. She helped me get through the worst of it. I don't know what I would have done without her. We still get coffee every week. She started dating someone new. He seems kind. She seems happy. Thea from yoga and I have become close. She doesn't know the full story. She knows I called off a wedding because my fiancé was dishonest. She doesn't need to know more than that. We go to movies and try new restaurants. She introduced me to her book club. I joined. I'm doing well at work. The marketing firm I contracted with hired me for another project. I raised my rates. They agreed without argument. I'm making more money than I did when I was with Timothy. I bought a better couch. I'm saving for a car. I moved out of the studio apartment last month. I found a 1-bedroom in a better neighborhood. It has big windows and hardwood floors. I can afford it on my own. I painted the bedroom a light blue. I hung curtains. I bought a rug. It feels like home. Someone asked me if I regret how I handled things. They asked if I wish I had just canceled quietly instead of the photo at the chapel. I don't regret it. Timothy was planning to marry me while pretending I was someone else. He was going to stand at the altar and imagine Ashley in a wedding dress. He deserved to be called out. People also asked if I've dated anyone since. I haven't. I'm not interested right now. I'm focused on work and my apartment and my friends. Maybe someday, but not now. Ashley sent me a message a few weeks ago. She said the restraining order was working. She said Timothy hasn't tried to contact her since the court date. She said her husband was still shaken up, but they were doing better. She thanked me again for understanding when she called. I told her I was glad she was safe. Victoria and I get coffee sometimes. She's the only one from Timothy's family I stayed in touch with. She said her family doesn't talk about Timothy anymore. She said it's like he doesn't exist. She said her grandmother is doing well and doesn't regret sending me the money. I told Victoria I appreciated everything she did. I deleted all the social media posts about this situation. I'm deleting this account after I post this update. I don't need it anymore. The whole thing feels like it happened to someone else. I'm not the same person who planned a wedding 8 months ago. I don't recognize her anymore. I'm not going to end this with some big realization or lesson learned. Things happened. I dealt with them. I moved on. That's it. I will say this though. If someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait for them to hurt you worse. Just believe them and leave. It'll save you a lot of trouble. That's all I have to say. I'm logging off now. Thanks to everyone who sent kind messages. Good luck to all of you. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I had to drop out of graduate school because my own mother destroyed my credit behind my back. When she found out I filed a police report with evidence, she disappeared without a trace and now police can't find her. Last week, I, 26F, discovered that my mother, 52F, has opened several credit cards and a car loan in my name, leaving me with over $38,000 in debt I never knew about until now. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold the phone when the credit card company representative listed all the accounts. The representative's voice faded into background noise while my brain tried to process what was happening. My mother, the woman who was supposed to protect me, had destroyed my financial future without a second thought. For context, I haven't spoken to my mother in about 14 months. I blocked her on everything after years of dealing with her destructive behavior. Growing up, she cycled in and out of jail for shoplifting from department stores. Whenever she got caught, she told us kids she only stole to keep food on our table, but then she'd come home with designer purses and expensive electronics instead of groceries. We moved 12 times before I finished high school because she never paid rent, and landlords eventually got fed up with her excuses. My mother also got arrested 4 times for identity theft. She took credit cards out in my grandmother's name, then my grandfather's name, then my uncle's name. Each time, she swore it was to keep the family afloat. Each time, she bought luxury items while we struggled to keep the water turned on. During high school, I worked 3 part-time jobs to save for college. By graduation, I had $12,000 saved and several small scholarships lined up. I also helped my mother with bills whenever she asked, because she made it clear that if I didn't help, my younger brother Terry, now 19M, would suffer. The night before I left for college, she asked for $200 for groceries. I gave her $300 just to make sure Terry would eat that week. On my first day of college in 2018, I called my mother to ask about transferring my savings to my new bank account near campus. She claimed the bank had placed a hold on large transfers and promised to send the money the following week. 3 weeks later, when I called again, she told me all the money had disappeared from the account. She blamed my grandfather, claiming he must have taken it before he passed away 4 months earlier. The timeline didn't add up, but I was too overwhelmed with classes to fight about it. During my sophomore year, I applied for a student credit card. The application got rejected due to poor credit history. This made no sense because I had never applied for credit before. I requested a credit report and found 7 credit cards in my name, all maxed out, and a car loan for a vehicle I had never seen. The address listed on all accounts was my mother's address. When I confronted her by phone, she screamed that it must have been my grandfather stealing my identity from beyond the grave. She demanded an apology for accusing her and hung up. She didn't speak to me for 2 weeks afterward. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in accounting and managed to get into a graduate program with my remaining savings. After my first year, I needed to take out Grad Plus loans to continue. My application was denied due to my poor credit score. The financial aid officer suggested I clean up my credit before reapplying. I called every creditor and confirmed that all the accounts listed my mother's address. The car loan was for a BMW registered at her house. The credit cards had purchased items delivered to her home. My grandfather had been deceased for 3 years by the time some of these accounts were opened. I dropped out of my master's program because I couldn't secure the loans. My dreams of becoming a CPA vanished overnight. I moved in with my college roommate and found a job as a bookkeeper at a local construction company. After months of deliberation, last week I finally filed a police report against my mother. The officer took down all the information and said they would investigate. My mother doesn't know about the report yet. My brother Terry messaged me yesterday asking why I wasn't talking to our mother anymore. I didn't tell him about the police report. He still lives with her, and I worry about putting him in the middle of this situation. Part of me wanted to just pay off the debts and move on with my life, but the total amount is more than I make in a year. Another part of me worries about what will happen to my brother if my mother goes to jail again. But mostly, I think about how she stole my education and my future without a second thought. I'm staying with my roommate Jen, 27F, while this unfolds. She suggested I check with the 3 credit bureaus to see if there are other accounts I don't know about yet. I put a freeze on my credit yesterday. The worst part is that I helped my mother financially whenever she asked. I paid her electric bill when it was about to be shut off. I sent her money for car repairs. I did everything a daughter could do to help, and she still stole from me. When I was growing up, we lived with my grandmother in a small 2-bedroom apartment. After she passed away, it was just my mother, Terry, and me squeezed into a 1-bedroom place where Terry and I shared the bedroom while our mother slept on the couch. Despite our cramped living conditions, I managed to maintain a 3.8 GPA and work those 3 part-time jobs. My uncle Mark went no contact with my mother when I was around 12. At the time, I never understood why. My mother told me he abandoned the family because he was selfish and thought he was better than us. For years, I believed her version of events and felt betrayed by him. Yesterday, I found Uncle Mark on social media and sent him a message explaining what happened. He responded within an hour and asked if we could meet for coffee this weekend. I agreed, hoping to get some perspective from someone who might understand what I'm going through. I don't know what will happen when my mother finds out about the police report. She has a history of extreme reactions. When my high school counselor reported concerns about our home situation to child services, my mother showed up at the school and caused such a scene that security had to escort her out. She then transferred me to a different school the next day. The police officer handling my case suggested I document any contact attempts from my mother once she learns about the investigation. He also recommended I gather any evidence of previous financial arrangements where she asked me for money, to establish a pattern of behavior. Jen suggested I talk to someone at the university to see if there's any way to re-enter the graduate program with my situation explained, but the thought of telling this story to strangers makes my stomach turn. The financial damage is bad enough without having to broadcast my family problems to the academic committee. For now, I'm going through all my old bank statements to document the money I sent to my mother over the years. The bank could only provide statements going back 7 years, but that should be enough to show I was trying to help her financially through legitimate means. I also contacted Terry's dad, who lives across the country. He and my mother split up when Terry was 3. He doesn't have custody but stays in touch with Terry. I wanted to give him a heads up that there might be some family turmoil coming, in case Terry needs support. He seemed concerned and asked if Terry's credit should be checked too. That hadn't occurred to me. Terry turned 18 last year. I wonder if she's already started using his information for new accounts. I mentioned this to the police officer, who noted it in my file but said Terry would need to file his own report if his identity was also stolen. I'm meeting with Uncle Mark tomorrow. I don't know what to expect, but I hope he can help me understand how to move forward without falling apart. Right now, I feel like I'm barely holding it together. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since my last post. I haven't heard anything from the police yet about my case, but I've been doing some investigating on my own. I met with Uncle Mark at a coffee shop downtown. We hadn't seen each other in 14 years. He looked older than I remembered, with gray streaks in his hair and lines around his eyes. He hugged me when I arrived, and for a moment, I felt like a kid again. Uncle Mark explained why he cut contact with my mother and ultimately the rest of the family. When he was 29, he discovered multiple credit cards and a mortgage refinance in his name that he never applied for. The mortgage had missed payments, and his credit was destroyed. When he investigated, he found out my mother had used his personal information to open these accounts. Uncle Mark confronted her, and she denied everything. She told everyone in the family that Uncle Mark was having a mental breakdown and making up stories about her. My grandmother believed my mother and sided with her. Uncle Mark showed them the proof. The accounts all listed my mother's address, and signature experts confirmed she had forged his name. When the evidence became too overwhelming to deny, my mother told everyone that Uncle Mark had given her permission to use his credit because she was struggling as a single mother. Uncle Mark never gave any such permission. He pressed charges, and my mother spent 6 months in jail. After that, he went no contact with the whole family because my grandmother and other relatives continued to enable my mother's behavior. The most disturbing part of our conversation came next. Uncle Mark revealed that after he went no contact, he reached out to my grandmother because he was worried about me. He knew my mother's pattern and feared she would eventually use my information too. My grandmother brushed off his concerns and refused to hear anything negative about my mother. Uncle Mark said he and his wife discussed trying to get custody of me and Terry, but their lawyer advised that it would be nearly impossible without evidence of physical abuse. Financial exploitation of children wasn't enough for the courts to remove us from our mother's care. This revelation hit me hard. Someone had tried to warn the family about what would happen to me, and no one listened. Uncle Mark's wife even attempted to establish a college fund for me, but my mother refused to provide my social security number to set it up. Uncle Mark then told me something that made my blood run cold. When I was 16, he had petitioned the court to have my social security number changed and restricted until I turned 18, arguing that my mother was likely to use it fraudulently. The judge denied the petition, stating that there wasn't sufficient evidence of imminent harm, and that parents generally have the right to manage their children's financial affairs. After our meeting, Uncle Mark emailed me copies of all his documentation from his own identity theft case against my mother. He also connected me with the lawyer who had helped him. The lawyer agreed to consult with me at a reduced rate given the family connection and similar circumstances. Armed with this new information, I went back to the police station to add Uncle Mark's documentation to my case file. The officer seemed more interested once I could show a pattern of behavior spanning decades. On the advice of Uncle Mark and the lawyer, I also reached out to the Federal Trade Commission to file an identity theft report. They provided guidance on disputing the fraudulent accounts and dealing with debt collectors. I checked in with Terry to see how things were going at home. He mentioned that our mother had been acting strangely over the past week, constantly checking the mail and obsessively monitoring her phone. I suspect she might have received some notification related to the investigation, though the police hadn't told me they had contacted her yet. I asked Terry if he'd ever checked his credit report. He hadn't, so I walked him through the process over the phone. To my relief, his credit report was clean so far. I advised him to put a freeze on his credit just to be safe. He seemed confused about why it was necessary but agreed to do it. Uncle Mark invited me to dinner with his family next weekend. I accepted, curious to meet the cousins I never knew I had. He has 2 children close to my age that I've never met due to the family rift. After meeting with Uncle Mark, I started questioning other things my mother had told me over the years. She always claimed we struggled financially because my father abandoned us before I was born and never paid child support. I asked Uncle Mark about my father, and he gave me a completely different story. According to Uncle Mark, my father did try to be involved in my life. He paid child support consistently until my mother took me and moved across the country without telling him where we were going. He spent years trying to locate us, but my mother used different names and moved frequently to avoid being found. By the time he tracked us down, I was 10 years old, and my mother threatened to accuse him of abuse if he tried to contact me. I'm still processing this information. The narrative I grew up with, that my father was a deadbeat who wanted nothing to do with me, might be completely false. Uncle Mark offered to help me locate my father if I wanted to reach out. He thinks my father still lives in Arizona. I haven't decided yet if I'm ready for that step, but it's comforting to know the option exists. The lawyer Uncle Mark connected me with suggested I check if my mother had filed tax returns using me as a dependent after I was financially independent. This could constitute additional fraud. I requested my tax transcripts from the IRS to investigate. Yesterday, I received a call from one of the credit card companies involved in my case. They've completed their fraud investigation and removed the account from my credit report. It's a small victory, but it gives me hope that I might be able to repair my financial situation eventually. I still haven't heard directly from my mother. According to Terry, she hasn't mentioned anything about police or fraud investigations. Either she hasn't been contacted yet, or she's keeping it from him. I'm staying with Jen for now, but I've started looking for my own apartment. I need to establish more independence and security, especially if things get complicated with my mother once the investigation progresses. I feel like I've been living in a fabricated reality for my entire life. The stories I believed about my family, about why we struggled, about who was to blame, it all seems like an elaborate fiction created by my mother to maintain control. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and my mother finally discovered that I filed a police report, and her reaction was exactly as destructive as I expected. Last month, I temporarily unfroze my credit to apply for an apartment. 2 days later, I received an alert that someone had attempted to open a new credit card in my name. The application listed my mother's address. After all this time and with an active police investigation, she tried to use my identity again. I immediately contacted the detective handling my case. He seemed frustrated but not surprised. Apparently, this new attempt strengthened the case against her. He requested records from the credit card company and told me he would be visiting my mother for questioning. 3 days later, Terry called me in a panic. Police officers had shown up at the house and questioned our mother about identity theft. She denied everything, claimed she hadn't spoken to me in over a year, which was true, and told them I was mentally unstable and making false accusations because I was angry about childhood discipline. After the police left, she went on a rampage through the house, screaming about betrayal and ungrateful children. Terry recorded part of her meltdown on his phone and sent it to me. The level of rage was disturbing, especially when she started making threats about making sure I would pay for this. Terry packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. He's now looking into whether he can move into college housing early for the summer session. He's supposed to start his freshman year in August. The day after the police visit, I tried to log into my Experian account to check my credit report. My password didn't work. After trying to reset it, I discovered that someone had changed the email address, phone number, and security questions associated with the account. I couldn't regain access. I called Experian's fraud department and discovered that someone had taken control of my account 2 days earlier. The customer service representative helped me regain access and place additional security measures on the account. The log showed that the changes were made from an IP address that traced back to my mother's internet provider. I reported this new development to the detective. He explained that this was another piece of evidence showing a pattern of identity theft and now computer fraud. He said they were building a case but needed more concrete evidence linking my mother directly to the fraudulent accounts. The detective asked if I would be willing to allow a new credit card application to go through and be delivered to my mother's address. They would monitor the situation, and if she activated or used the card, they would have ironclad evidence to arrest her. I refused. I wasn't willing to allow more damage to my credit score, even temporarily, just to build a stronger case. Instead, I asked about changing my social security number. The detective provided information on the process, warning me that it's difficult to qualify but given the ongoing identity theft, I might have a case. I've started gathering documentation for the application. Uncle Mark connected me with his financial advisor, who specializes in helping identity theft victims. The advisor recommended specific steps to secure my accounts beyond just credit freezes. I've implemented two-factor authentication on everything, created new email addresses for financial correspondence, and changed all my passwords to complex combinations my mother couldn't guess. The financial advisor also helped me draft dispute letters for the remaining fraudulent accounts. 3 more have been removed from my credit report, but there are still 4 outstanding, including the car loan for the BMW I never owned. I visited the DMV to check if there were any vehicles registered in my name. There weren't, which means my mother likely used my identity for the loan but registered the car in her name. The financial advisor said this actually helps my case, as it shows clear intent to defraud. Terry called yesterday with news that might help my case. He found mail addressed to me at our mother's house, credit card statements and collection notices that she had been hiding. He photographed everything before she could discover he'd seen them. The statements show purchases at stores near her house, for items I never bought. Uncle Mark and his wife invited me to stay with them while this situation unfolds. They live about an hour away from my current location. I'm considering the offer, especially since Jen will be moving in with her boyfriend next month, and I'd need to find new housing anyway. I've been avoiding social gatherings because explaining the situation to friends feels embarrassing. Most people can't comprehend a mother stealing from her child. They either think I'm exaggerating or they pity me, neither of which feels good. The lawyer connected me with a credit counselor who specializes in identity theft cases. They've been helping me establish a timeline of all the fraudulent accounts and documenting the steps I've taken to dispute them. This documentation will be important both for the police investigation and for the Social Security number change application. Yesterday, I received a certified letter from my mother's address. Inside was a formal cease and desist letter, apparently written by a lawyer, demanding that I stop making false accusations against my mother. The letter threatened civil action for defamation if I continued to spread lies about her. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer, who confirmed it was not written by an actual attorney. The letterhead belonged to a law firm that closed 3 years ago, and the bar number listed belonged to a lawyer who died in 2019. My mother had created a fake legal document to intimidate me. My lawyer is adding this to our documentation as evidence of ongoing harassment and fraud. He said it demonstrates consciousness of guilt and could strengthen the criminal case. Update 3. 4 months have passed since my last update, and there have been significant developments in my case. The police investigation finally reached a conclusion, though not exactly the way I hoped. Last month, the detective called to inform me that they had enough evidence to charge my mother with identity theft, fraud, and harassment. The credit card companies provided records showing applications submitted from her IP address, along with delivery confirmations to her home. The Experian account takeover was traced back to her devices. However, before they could arrest her, my mother packed up and disappeared. She emptied her bank accounts, abandoned her apartment, and went off the grid. The detective believes she fled to Florida, where her sister lives, but they haven't been able to locate her yet. An arrest warrant has been issued, but until she's found, the case remains in limbo. Terry confirmed that our mother left suddenly, claiming she was going on vacation. She didn't tell him where she was going or when she would return. He found out she was actually gone for good when the landlord called asking about the abandoned apartment. The police let Terry retrieve his belongings before the landlord cleared everything out. With my mother's disappearance, I've been able to make progress on cleaning up my financial situation. All of the fraudulent accounts have been removed from my credit reports after lengthy disputes. My credit score has improved by over 100 points, though it's still not where it should be. The most significant victory came last week when I received approval to change my Social Security number. The process was arduous, requiring extensive documentation of the ongoing identity theft and proof that I had exhausted all other remedies. The persistent fraud attempts, even after police involvement, finally convinced the Social Security Administration that a new number was necessary. I've started the process of updating my new Social Security number with employers, banks, and government agencies. It's time-consuming but worth it for the peace of mind. Terry moved into college housing early and has been adjusting well to university life. He's studying computer science and has already joined a programming club. We talk regularly, and he's processing his own feelings about our mother's actions. He checked his credit again and fortunately found no issues. Uncle Mark and his family have become a steady presence in my life. I spend most holidays and some weekends with them. My cousins and I have developed a close relationship despite the years of separation. It feels like recovering a piece of family history that was stolen from me. Last month, with Uncle Mark's help, I reached out to my father in Arizona. We spoke on the phone for 3 hours. He confirmed what Uncle Mark had told me. He had tried to be part of my life but was systematically pushed out by my mother. He sent me childhood photos I had never seen, cards he had mailed that I never received, and court documents showing his attempts to establish visitation. I'm planning to visit him in Arizona next month. I'm nervous but also excited to connect with that missing piece of my history. He remarried years ago and has 2 children, which means I have half siblings I've never met. On the education front, I received unexpected news from my former university. After explaining my situation to the graduate program director and providing documentation of the identity theft, they offered me conditional readmission. I would need to take some refresher courses since it's been 2 years, but I could potentially restart my master's program in the spring semester. I moved into my own apartment last week. It's small but secure, with good locks and a security system. I've implemented every recommended precaution. Mail goes to a P.O. box, my address is unlisted, and I've opted out of all public records databases that sell personal information. The detectives still contact me occasionally with updates on their search for my mother. They found her car abandoned at a bus station in Georgia, but the trail goes cold from there. She could be anywhere now. Terry found a box of documents in the storage unit our mother kept. Among them were birth certificates, social security cards, and other identification documents for people we don't know. The detective believes she may have been stealing identities beyond just family members. They're investigating these new leads. My lawyer thinks it's unlikely my mother will face serious jail time even when she's found, given the overcrowding in prisons and the non-violent nature of her crimes. However, the multiple offenses, pattern of behavior, and flight to avoid prosecution could result in a harsher sentence than her previous identity theft convictions. I've started working with a new therapist who specializes in family trauma. Processing the magnitude of betrayal and dismantling the false narratives I grew up with has been challenging work. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life on my terms. With my credit improving, I've been able to secure a car loan for a reliable used vehicle. It's nothing fancy like the BMW my mother bought with my stolen identity, but it's mine, legitimately. I still check my credit reports monthly, a habit I'll probably never break. But for the first time in years, I feel like I have control over my financial future. The detective called yesterday with news that someone matching my mother's description was spotted using a fake ID in a small town in Florida. They're investigating, but I'm not holding my breath. Part of me hopes she's never found, so I never have to see her again or testify against her in court. Carrie and I talk about her sometimes, trying to understand how a mother could systematically destroy her children's futures. We may never have an answer that makes sense. For now, we're both focused on moving forward and building the lives we want, not the ones she tried to force us into.